welcome back! A huge shout out to each and every one of my subscribers, and if you're not yet subscribed, slightly quieter shout out to you. Thanks for the view. I actually spend quite a bit of time watching Capturing Christianity, where you can find Cameron here. I view it as practice. I try to call out their fallacies in real time. With that in mind, perhaps his channel has some merit. However, when he exhibits this sort of sloppy thinking, it's time to step up and lay a bit of a smackdown on him. Out of love, of course. Not for Cameron here specifically, but for all of you, and the billions that my content doesn't reach. The reason we violently disagree, the reason Twitter is a nightmare, the reason we are all about a month away from fighting with that uncle while ripping apart a dead-baked bird, well, it's all right here, folks. Cameron and his relativistic ideas of epistemology. If your uncle knew how to come to reasonable, rational conclusions, then he either wouldn't hold the views that he does, or he would be correct and able to convince you. Unless, of course, you are the uncle.
Babe, how do we know that we're not living in the Matrix?
First of all, I've never even seen The Matrix, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
First, credit. If you do not know an answer, go ahead and say, I don't know. This is truly the way towards education. And now to the question. First, it is a bit odd to ask it in the negative. How do I know I'm not living in the Matrix? Well, I have zero evidence that I am living in the Matrix. I understand that it is possible, yet I have no evidence that would point me in that direction. How do I know that I'm not living in the Matrix? Well, I don't know, but until I get some evidence that I am living in the Matrix, it would be wholly irrational to believe that I am. I don't actually hold a belief that I'm not living in the Matrix, in the exact same way that I do not hold a belief that Cameron here is wearing pink tighty-whities. Pinkies. I live my life, like most people I would expect, focusing on problems, issues, and the happiness that I experience. I don't experience the Matrix, nor Cameron's tidy pinkies. This is getting a bit overly analytical. I don't hold a belief on either. Sure, we might be living in the Matrix, but with no evidence of this, it would be unreasonable to believe it. Sure, we might not be living in the Matrix. Indeed, all that we experience could be reality. As this seems to be what we are dealing with, then let's deal with it. Try our best to improve ourselves and the world around us with the perceived reality, be it the actual reality or not, that surrounds us. I do not know that we are not living in the Matrix, but I live my life based on evidence. It seems as though this evidence is pointing toward the reality that we share. When there is evidence to the contrary, I will investigate this potential possibility. Likewise, I don't spend my time thinking about Cameron's undergarments. However, if for some reason it became important and there were some kind of evidence, I suppose I could investigate this as well.
Hey, Don, how do you know that's going to work?
40 years of... Ow! Ow!
Don might very well be an expert in this area. He says he has been doing this work for 40 years. I have very little experience in this area. It's probably best for me to listen to him. However, he did hurt himself in the video. Look, everyone makes mistakes, and yet I'm willing to take Don at his word that he has been doing work like this for many years, and that he will end up fixing the truck. I could be wrong. Don could be a compulsive liar. Don did hurt himself while doing it. But look, I see people every day. I see vehicles every day. I often see people fixing broken vehicles. This is a claim that we can and do have evidence for. We can go check out vehicles that Don has fixed in the past. We can make predictions about him being able to fix this vehicle. We can talk to other people who he has helped. We could give him some sort of vehicle mechanic test and score his results.
So both of these questions actually have something in common. They're epistemological. Epistemology is the study of how we come to know things, so broadly it's like the study of knowledge.
Yes, Cameron, you are correct. Although a great many people seem to have problems with analogies these days, and these two examples are quite different, you remain correct. These are both examples of questions that fall under the subject of epistemology. I might make this easier on you, though. All questions are in the realm of epistemology, or at least could be brought there. How are you today? This question is asking how you feel on this day, but there are several points here we could investigate if we were really bored or, well, let's just leave it at bored. How do you know that the you is real? If you're a brain in a vat, then you are only reporting the feelings which the matrix tells you to report. How do we know this feeling you have is correct? Perhaps you're lying, have a mental condition, or are otherwise in an altered state. Even the concept of today, or time in general, can be brought into question. Okay, enough. The point is simply that when we say things, ask things, make choices, decisions, or basically take any actions at all, we're using our beliefs, our knowledge, to do these things. This is epistemology at work. This is why I make videos, and this is the trap you set for your listeners. But let's wait for you to spring your primary school epistemological trap.
Questions like, how do we know that God exists, fall into a special category called religious epistemology.
Well, yeah, you can say that, but questions like, do we live in the Matrix, fall into a special category called matrix epistemology, or if Cameron is wearing pink underwear or not, falls into a special category called nasty epistemology. What you're referencing is a feeble attempt on the part of some believers to say that they don't have to have good reasons for their beliefs. Look, you don't have to bastardize epistemology or philosophy in order to believe whatever you like. Go ahead and believe it. You not only have every right to believe whatever you like, but I support your freedom to do so. I can make this very simple for you, though. It's not really so difficult, Cameron. In order to be reasonable, one must have reasons and use reason. In order to be rational, one must have good reasons and use reason. It doesn't matter if we're talking about how fast a Burak can fly a pedophile to heaven. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a drunk being able to put a pair of each animal on a boat. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Matrix. It doesn't matter if we're talking about what you had for breakfast. These are all claims. Different claims require different evidence, as the example of Don's points out. But they all require evidence if you want to call yourself reasonable or rational.
Some philosophers think that belief in God requires argument. You've got to have an argument for your belief in God in order for it to be reasonable.
Look, I don't care what some philosophers think. I don't care what all philosophers think. I only care about the arguments and their support. But let me help you out here a bit, Cameron. In order for a belief to be reasonable or rational, you would definitionally require some good reasons for that belief. Those reasons would have to use reason, and they would need to be rational. This is simply what reasonable and rational mean. Sorry, Cameron, it does not matter what the belief is. All beliefs require solid support in order to be considered rational and or reasonable. Look, I understand that words are descriptive and not prescriptive, and I'm not trying to force you into my understanding. I'm pointing out that if you have a different concept of rational and reasonable, you would have to provide them. I'm also pointing out that your concepts of these words seem very different from the concepts of most people.
Other philosophers disagree. They argue that belief in God is kind of like our belief that we aren't in the Matrix. We don't necessarily need arguments for that view in order for it to be reasonable.
Well, then, I would suggest buying or lending these, what did you call them? Ah, yes, philosophers. A dictionary. A belief in God, like a belief that we do or do not exist in the Matrix, just like a belief that the moon is made of green cheese, and that JFK was shot by reptilian overlords, are all potential beliefs that you have every right to hold. These are, however, only reasonable if reason is used. You may be going for some version of properly basic beliefs here. Some argue that external reality, the existence of self, and other beliefs are properly basic, meaning they do not require reasons, but we do have reasons for these. We seem to agree that we share an external reality. We can make predictions and see the consequences of our actions. We interact with people daily who seem to share these experiences. I'm pretty sure I exist because every 50 videos I make, I get about one new subscriber. Now, Could we be wrong about these beliefs? Yes, we certainly could. But until we have some evidence that suggests these beliefs are wrong, I'm going to go with the evidence I do have, that these beliefs are in fact, to some degree, correct. Cameron, have you ever had a conversation with a Trump supporter? Someone who thinks that he was sent by God to lead America to its destiny? Have you ever had a conversation with a flat earther? A QAnon supporter? Someone whom you are fairly sure is wrong? Haven't you ever noticed that they make ridiculous claims, provide weak or non-existent evidence? Haven't you ever seen them try to weasel out of a question or redefine words in order to make their point? But that's what you're doing here. You are creating a special category for your unreasonable belief. This is known as special pleading.
So what do you think? What is your epistemology?
Well, Cameron, I would say that I think you're trying to get out of being reasonable and yet still want to call yourself reasonable. Saying we don't need to be reasonable and still get to call ourselves reasonable is, well, unreasonable. But worse than the sophistry you've laid out here, worse than you disregarding the concepts that your words reflect, worse than all that is your understanding of epistemology. As you correctly pointed out, epistemology is the study of knowledge. As I have pointed out in other videos, I don't think we can have 100% knowledge. So then, epistemology is the study of coming as close as we can to knowledge, or capital T truth. One can certainly say, my epistemology is believing what others tell me. My epistemology is based on flipping a coin, or even my epistemology is based on how I feel. Unfortunately, none of these are reliable methods of coming anywhere near knowledge. And this seems to be your misunderstanding. You can use any method you like to claim knowledge. You can even use the word epistemology to label your method. The problem is that your conclusions will not be reasonable nor rational if your method is poor. Epistemology is like math in this way. If you care about your answer being correct, you need to use a method that will get you to a correct answer. If we get to make up any method we like, as you've suggested in the very question, what is your epistemology? Then I ask you, Cameron, what is your math? Doesn't that sound like a dumb question? You can tell me that 2 + 2 = 18. You can tell me that this is an example of your math. And I can tell you that I don't see a point in continuing a conversation with you, well, at least until you start being reasonable.